When I'm afraid of something, I go and poke it with a stick to see what happens. I run towards it and find out and try and work out, how does this work? Why are people behaving this way? Why do we have these kinds of thoughts? So that led to a whole lifetime of going really deep into understanding not just the physicality of sex, but the mental part. Why do we, the drive, why do we have the kinds of turn-ons we have? Why do we behave in this way? What is actually motivating this? How does it benefit us? Why do we do it? So I got really, really curious about that. And now, through that entire journey, I mean, I did all sorts of things. I've put my anthropology degree to use by actually going into the field, so to speak.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become the best possible versions of themselves and to strive for overall health, mental health, emotional health, physical health, all of the healths, without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who've been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time somebody shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. So you're in Australia, right?
I live in the future. You know, Australia.
It's tomorrow.
It is tomorrow in Australia. I
That's
live
awesome.
right down the bottom of Australia in rural Victoria, so in the countryside. My nearest big
Nice.
city is Melbourne, which is known for its brilliant food and arts and culture.
I'm a big foodie.
Mhm.
Yeah. So can you tell my listener a little bit about who you are and why you are who you are? Or what you think why you are who you are?
Well, that's a good question. We're not 100% conscious of that, are we?
Nope.
We're so many dynamic moving parts. I am I am a sex geek. I've spent my whole life trying to understand sex because initially when I was younger, I didn't understand it at all. It felt like something that was being taken from me rather than there was something for my benefit. And that, distressed me when I was younger a lot. So when I'm afraid of something, I go and poke it with a stick to see what happens. I run towards it and find out and try and work out, how does this work? Why are people behaving this way? Why do we have these kinds of thoughts? So that led to a whole lifetime of going really deep into understanding not just the physicality of sex, but the mental part. Why do we, the drive, why do we have the kinds of turn-ons we have? Why do we behave in this way? What is actually motivating this? How does it benefit us? Why do we do it? So I got really, really curious about that. And now, through that entire journey, I mean, I did all sorts of things. I've put my anthropology degree to use by actually going into the field, so to speak. The anthropologists study culture. In case you don't know what an anthropologist is, study human culture by actually going and participating in the culture that they're studying. And you could say I did that because you could say I did that very thoroughly when as I went and actually became a sex worker and a professional dominatrix for about 12 years full time. And I learned an awful lot about what motivates people sexually. Now I've come up with an entirely new understanding of what sexual fantasies are and why we have the patterns of turn-ons that we do. and how they can benefit us actually really deeply. And I am now the expert who teaches the sexperts how to understand and engage the erotic mind, how to understand and engage sexual fantasies in particular. So there you go. That's a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah, this is so exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, I was telling her right before I hit record, I've been excited about this all day. My mother was never like secretive about the topic of sex. Like I asked her how her baby's made when I was 6 years old, and she tried with the well, a man and woman fall in love, blah blah blah. I was like, no, I want to know how you do it. And so she explained it to me. I was like, okay. Like it was never a hush hush topic in my family. So when I found out that in some families it is a hush hush topic, I was very like, what? You know, is that something that you get regularly? Like people who grew up not allowed to talk about it or anything like that?
Yeah, lots of people have a very brief version of what sex is explained to them when they're growing up. They might learn the physical mechanics of it, but that it's very, very rare that anybody, either through sex education or their parents, taught them why they have the kinds of turn-ons they have, why they have dirty thoughts, why they have fantasies, why they might want to be dominated or to dominate somebody else, or why they might want a threesome, and why their turn-on is different to the person that they love, and why these sexual fantasies don't seem to match the reality of being with a real human. There was no understanding of why we did that. It was just like yeah, I mean, did that come as part of your sex education?
No, it did not. But I think it helped. I don't know. I want to say it helped knowing the mechanics, made me more careful when I became sexually active, if that makes sense. Like just being educated on, this goes here, that comes out, blah, blah, blah. And then that's how babies can be made. Like just knowing that and knowing how to protect myself as best I could, versus people who aren't educated, and then they start getting those feelings of like, where is this coming from? Why am I turned on? Why do I want to go hump my bookshelf? Yeah, I think just knowing the mechanics of it made me safer, but I never understood what you're talking about, like why those thoughts,
why those thoughts. Yeah. It's absolutely useful. It's such a powerful thing to have knowledge. You have choices if you have knowledge. If you know how something works, you can choose the benefits of that thing and avoid the pitfalls of that same thing. But without any knowledge whatsoever, you're not protected. You're just left to your own to the whims, and you're much more likely to accidentally stumble into the harmful aspects of that thing. And it doesn't have to be just sex. It's like downhill skiing. It's better to know how to ski than to have to just try and work your own way down. Then you can get the benefits and the joy of a dangerous sport with much more minimal chance of being harmed. But there's always risk in life, isn't there? There's always risk.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be probably more open than I've ever been on this show.
Oh, well done.
Yeah. I was always the one who was like, how do I explain it? Like I was bullied growing up based on my looks. I was always the chubby kid. And so anybody who gave me any kind of attention, I was like instantly, oh, they love me. And then when sex came into the picture, it was, oh my gosh, they want to have sex with me. They must love me. So can you, or do you know where that comes from? Like, because sex doesn't always have to be two people in love.
No, it doesn't. You're absolutely right. It can actually have a whole lot of different reasons for having sex. Stress relief can be a valid reason for having sex.
Yeah.
having any of the reasons that you would want to dance on the dance floor and have fun and joy and connect with the delight of life and companionship are also valid reasons for wanting to have sex. But love is not desire. Desire is always about yourself, projecting onto somebody else. Desire is I want. It's something that you have that will benefit me in some way. It's focused on I. I want. Love is how can I benefit you in some way? Right?
I like that distinction.
Two different directions there. You can have love and desire at the same time, but they're not the same mechanism. They're different mechanisms. And when you understand that, then you can much more deliberately activate desire on purpose in situations that benefit you, and not mistake it for love as well, which is really important, because we get really hurt, don't we, when somebody's desiring us and their intention for being there and their expectation for being there is at odds with ours, and then we think that they're a complete jerk for not meeting our needs, but actually we just had different expectations going into the encounter or into the relationship. But what I really am an expert in focusing on is the sexual fantasies. And sexual fantasies are, well, they're stories created by your desire, that part of you that says, I want. And that sounds scary and selfish, and it can be, if without a lot of knowledge, we can accidentally stumble into something harmful. But with knowledge, we can get the benefit out of this, and there's so much benefit to be had, right? So I want, your desire points to something that you do actually currently need, that you don't currently have. That's how it works. So it will point to, like just on a mundane example, for instance, if you've been focusing on your work for an awful lot and you've been at your computer and hunched over and focused in workflow, you don't currently have any joyous fun for the sake of it. So suddenly you might start daydreaming and desiring a holiday, right? Because you actually need a different change. A different part of your brain needs attention. A different kind of way of thinking and being in the world needs attention. So it's actually something that does benefit you and your wellness. That's the thing that I discovered about desire, is actually when you understand its symbolic language, it's always true. It's actually pointing to something that you really do need. But even sexually, it does. But we have to understand its language first, otherwise we're going to misunderstand. And all sorts of bad things can happen. We don't want to take it literally. We want to understand its symbolic language. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back a little bit. A sexual fantasy is anything that you think about that gets you sexually excited. Okay, so it can be fantasizing about, Prince Charming coming in and swooping in and just taking care of all of our responsibilities for us so we can just, let go and swoon. Right? Or it could be, fantasies of multiple people finding you super attractive and you being the center of attention and you get to have all of them. It could be fantasies about somebody so your actual partner. You could be thinking about, or somebody you just started dating, what's Friday night's date going to be like? And you start imagining it. And you start getting excited thinking about the kinds of things that might happen. That's also a sexual fantasy, even though it's a real person. It's not a made-up story so much.
Yeah.
Also, when you're with your partner and you're already having sex, anything that you think about that enhances your arousal, which could be thinking about somebody else, but it could be thinking about your actual partner, but your partner's doing something different than what they're doing right now. Like just a really simple example can be they're currently looking at you with worshipful goddess eyes, that they just think you're a goddess and they just want to go into reverent worship, and that's what they're looking at you. And you suddenly fantasize about them as not looking at you in that reverent, gentle, worshipful, but now they're very primal. Now they've got predator eyes, and they're still on your side. You're still safe, but now they're going to pounce. Just a totally different vibe. That's also a sexual fantasy, right? And why did, even though you really enjoyed being gently worshipped, why did you suddenly desire this other thing of being primal? Why? What's going on there? That's the kind of thing I'm fascinated with.
Yeah. And so then you ask, now that I have the understanding of desire, then you ask, what is it that I need?
Right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a thing that's let's say that this part of you called desire lives in your unconscious. It's living. It's not necessarily a really conscious part of you. It's quite a primal part of you, right? So, well, you know it. You know, you're sitting comfortable on the couch, and suddenly you desire a pickle sandwich. That desire for a pickle sandwich just appeared in your awareness. It feels like it arrived from somewhere else and just arrived there. But you know, without a doubt, that you want a pickle sandwich, and you know what brand pickles, you know what kind of bread, you know, and it's enough motivation for you to go and get this thing. So it does feel like something outside of you is actually sending you this thing, even though it's just you. But this part of you, well, it speaks in that unconscious language, doesn't it? It speaks in the language of dreams and stories and has a different kind of logic to it. It's not literal. It's down there trying to play charades with you. It's going, you need this thing. I know that because that's my job. My entire reason for existing is to let you know that you need this thing you don't currently have. Right? But I don't speak English. I can't tell you in English. I can only tell you in symbols and associations and things. So I'm just going to send you a message of something that kind of matches the same thing, right? It's going to make you feel that feeling. Like if you look at that, it's going to make you think of that. Okay. To give you an example, let's just say a non-sexual example is, let's just say you suddenly desire owning a red sports car. You just really want to own a red sports car, and suddenly you're seeing them everywhere. Right? Desire, every time you see it, desire's like, I'm interested, perks up. and it seems like all of the universe is conspiring to bring red sports cars driving past you, right? So let's imagine buying that sports car. Let's go, okay, this desire is here for a reason. Let's just play a game of imagination. Let's go and buy it in our mind. Let's pretend we're going to opening the car door, smelling the new car smell. We're driving it out of the lot. It's ours. We can feel the power of the engine. We've got control of the steering wheel. We can go as fast as we want. We can go anywhere we want. Suddenly it feels like people are admiring me. Suddenly people think that I'm sexier than I am because I've got a sexy car. Oh, I feel really powerful too. I feel really powerful because I've got control of this really powerful beastie engine, right? I've got freedom as well. I could drive anywhere. There's the beach on the side there and the wind in my hair, and I could go anywhere. I've got freedom. I've got possibility. The question I ask then is, how does that feel to have that? What change internal state have you had? What's changed? How do you feel that's different to how you felt before you imagined owning this car? What's changed? Well, I feel more free. I feel more possibility. I feel more powerful. I feel more desired. Okay, that's actually what desire was pointing at, not the car. The car is just the symbol. The car is interchangeable, but you can actually get those same things in lots of other ways.
Yeah.
Sexual fantasies are exactly the same kind of message. They are telling us exactly what we do need in order to be able to let go. And here's the key though. Sexual fantasies are very specific stories. They are designed to help us overcome our own very natural fear of being vulnerable so that we can let go and just surrender into the pleasure of play and intimacy and connection.
Yeah.
Right? So they're stories that change our internal state. They're the perfect symbol that will change our internal state exactly how we need to so that we can let go. And that's the genius of them. So they're not meant to be taken for literal instructions of how to behave in the outside world. That could end badly. But they are right when it comes to it. They know our own mind because they are our own mind, helping us change our state so that we can let go. That's why what you need and your fantasies are going to be different to your partner's, because their fears of letting go to be vulnerable are going to be different than yours. And their story is going to need to be different. So your sexual fantasies are going to be different. So this is a whole art form of learning, how do we navigate this for each other then? Because really, we really, really secretly want our partner to be magically into exactly what we are, right?
Right.
But
I know I do.
We do. We want them to want what we want. If we want a threesome, we want them to have a threesome, and we think we need to have a literal threesome in order to meet the need. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. You can go and have a threesome if you want to, but it won't necessarily meet the need.
Mm-hmm.
It won't meet the. You have to understand what did you get to feel when you imagined having that threesome that you didn't feel before. That's actually what the story is pointing to. Okay. There's lots of different ways that we can get that same feeling. And that's what I did as a sex worker a lot. So a complete stranger would walk through the door. Each person has their own set of fears of that they have to overcome in order to let go and be vulnerable and just surrender into pleasure, right? And into connection. And into some really profound places, actually, once you get this. It's quite astonishing. And each person is different. And I had to work out really quickly what their particular pattern was and how to help them get there. So what I did is I developed this art form. I sat them down on my red velvet couch, and we had a little tea ceremony with little Moroccan teacups, and I just, low lighting and nice music and candlelight. And then I would ask them about their past peak experiences, which they've romanticized, because that's what we do. and about their sexual fantasies. And then I would listen to how their own mind very cleverly overcame their particular fears of letting go so that they could surrender into these beautiful states. Right? And of course, it's a story. I can't just magically, let's just imagine that somebody who's they're excited by having, sex with the entire football team. I don't know. Let's just say that. I don't have the entire football team in my cupboard to bring out.
Right.
How do you create the same effect? Like, you listen to what it was actually talking about, because just like the car, that red sports car, the entire football team is not the point. Right. That's an exchangeable symbol. It's how did they change their states? And let's just imagine that they actually felt super desired because so many people wanted them. All of the cool kids, the jocks, really wanted them, and all of them, they were the center of attention, right? But they imagined that the football team was using them for sex, which is a very common sexual fantasy, which confuses the hell out of people. They're like, why? The last thing I want in real life is to be used. That's horrible. Right? But I'm sexually excited by this idea of the whole football team using me for sex. What do I make of that? That's so confusing, right? But it's actually a really genius mechanism. Again, asking yourself this question: what do I get to feel if someone's using me that I'm not feeling if otherwise? Well, thinking into it, feeling into it. Well, if someone's using me, they definitely desire me because they're being selfish, right? They wouldn't want me because they're only thinking about themselves, not me. So they are, there's no doubt that they're just being polite. They desire me. So now all of my fear that I'm not desirable enough has been dissolved. Remember that this part of you is not instructions of how to live in the outside world. It is instructions of how to change your internal state. I have to say that several times to really land. Right? So you don't actually want to be used. But if you go into the story of it, what it's given you is this freedom to really believe that you are desirable. What it's also given you is this other thing, which is you don't have to take any responsibility for their pleasure. You can just surrender and have them meet all of your needs. And you can be as greedy as you want because there's an awful lot of them. So they can, you're not too much. You can have everything you need. You don't have to stop until you're done. Right?
Yeah.
It's right, there's this it's created a story that will give us permission to be able to allow ourselves to focus on our own desires, to focus on our own I want, and give us the thing that we need. Right? It's this story of they're using me, so I don't have to worry about them. Their needs are taken care of. Now I can focus on myself. I don't have to, I can just let go. And of course, because it's a fantasy, you get touched exactly the way that you really wanted to be touched until you don't want it anymore. So it's
that point, just like cut.
Yeah. Right. So unlike real life being used where you feel horrible afterwards and you get none of your needs met, in a fantasy, what it's done is it's flipped it on its head, and the end result is the exact opposite. You get all of your needs met.
Yeah.
Right. Really clever alchemical reaction there. It changes everything. That's why I call sexual fantasies transformational stories that take us somewhere inside ourselves.
I love that. I'm so intrigued by all of this. And going back to you talking about sitting them on your couch and just having that discussion, like, can you imagine how different people's relationships would be if that's what they all did? That's what we all did, just sat down and had that conversation.
Right. And we avoid it. We really avoid talking that openly about it. We've, fear of rejection, embarrassment, all of the things. But even now with my coaching clients at because I don't do sex work anymore, when I start asking them questions about their particular fantasies and their patterns of turn-ons, they say, nobody's ever asked me that in my whole life. I've been even studying sex on purpose and no one's ever asked me that before. My sex work clients would say the same. No one's ever asked me that before. And how does it feel when someone's so fascinated by you that they want to understand you? How do you feel when someone puts their full attention on you? And we squirm, but also
I feel desired. Like I'm important enough for them to want to know what I like.
Right.
Yeah.
You matter. What you desire matters. Right. And when somebody else, because remember how desire is I want, if someone's coming at you left, right, and center with their desire for you, they're just stuck in I want, their own self needs. They haven't even seen you. But when they turn to you and they ask you all about what turns you on, remember how that is closer to love. That feels like intimacy. That is, who are you? How can I benefit you?
Yeah.
Right?
And then how can we benefit each other?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, we've got to flip the tables and do it for each other, right?
Hold on, I'm gonna go talk to my husband. Just kidding. Honey.
Right. There's a
Yeah.
lot of landmines in learning how to have that conversation, though, because again, with the sex education, did you get taught how to have that kind of conversation, how to even understand this stuff?
Yeah.
No. So that's also something that I have to help people with as well, because they ain't going to know. It's not something you
Yeah.
stumble across by yourself most of the time. Yeah.
Do you typically coach individuals or do you coach couples as well?
That's a great question. I actually
Yeah.
prefer to coach individuals. When couples come to me, I coach them individually first, because the very first relationship you have to form is a relationship with your own desire, right? And then you know how to share it with somebody else. So first of all, you have to learn how to connect with your own internal compass, because that's what desire is. It's pointing you out what you don't have and learn how to follow it, and learn how to understand it, learn how to hear it. Then you need to understand your map, which is that's breaking down the actual story, the narrative itself in the fantasy, and say, how did that work? How did that change you from that state to the other? And how could we do that in real life play? Right. And then we move into, okay, how can I invite my partner into this? How can we deliberately create ongoing date nights where we can explore this together and just keep discovering and unfolding and going even further and further, which is such a fantastic thing to do, because you're no longer relying on honeymoon hormones to get horny. You're now actually deliberately activating the thing that your mind told you need to activate your arousal, and sharing that with each other. And that is one of the most beautiful, intimate journeys. And you know what? This is the part where people go, you've heard of, I cannot even tell you, like when you actually really can follow that map and you do listen and you do actually get past each of that person's resistances to letting go, you drop into more profound intimacy, more profound pleasure, and well, erotic states of consciousness. I don't know how to say it, like than you thought possible. I got that comment over and over and over again as a sex worker. Complete stranger I just met a couple of hours ago. We just had an experience. I trusted their mind and followed their map. And they would say, wow, I had no idea I could feel this way. I just came here thinking I wanted a busty blonde. I didn't know. But now that I had no idea. And they'd say things like, I feel like I've taken ecstasy and LSD and I'm on drugs, but actually, no, I don't feel like I'm on drugs at all. I feel more real. It's the opposite of drugs at the same time. It's just that I'm open like I would be if I was on drugs.
Right.
Right. And I'm actually more me than I've ever been. This is who I really am. This is who, and that's who you are when you peel back your fears. That's who you are. And some of the things that they would say, and I personally experienced as well. Well, it sounds an awful lot like the people who talk about the amazing states of consciousness that you can get to through sacred sex and tantric sex and all of those places, except that I went through the smut to get there. I trusted their own mind. It was there for a reason. We just had to understand it. And then we have to have the tools of how to behave well with it. So that's actually my life's mission at the moment. Is I'm finishing up a book called The Spirituality of Smut, which will come out later this year as well.
That's awesome.
So that's probably, it's probably not what people think about, right? When you think about when you're thinking about that threesome, you're not thinking, I'm going to enter into a holy state of oneness and meet God. Kind of surprising.
Yeah. This is all really, really good. I'm loving this conversation.
Mm.
My husband has had a lot of health issues in the last couple years. And he long story short, he was internally bleeding for 2 years. He's had 2 blood transfusions. They finally figured out what it is. He's had surgery. He's recovering now. So like I feel like I'm the one ready to pounce.
Nice.
So yeah, and so this has been perfect. So I can be like, when you're recovered, take a listen to this. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll keep that in. Whatever.
That's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you can begin the journey on your own now. You don't have to actually wait for that. Lots of people are single. I am actually choosing quite deliberately not to have any sexual partners at the moment, even though that is an enormously important part of my life, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm choosing not to at the moment. I'm going deeply into my own solo practice, and the value of actually really spending time on your own and exploring your own eroticism, the way your own mind works, and learning how to trust this internal wisdom and follow it to incredible places inside of yourself. That is the only way you can share it with somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to start there. And actually, at the moment, I'm finding that there is absolutely not. I can choose to share it with somebody else, and I will when the time is right. But I'm not missing out on anything by being in a solo practice. I'm actually entering into those states that I yearn for most, the things that I actually really deeply want met in me. But by understanding and following this part of myself, I'm actually genuinely fulfilling them in a way that is just actual satiation. And I don't just mean an orgasm. I mean emotionally, psychologically, the entire thing. Right? Now, I'm not coming at people needy. I'm not coming at people needing them to fulfill anything with me. Now I've got this bubbling up excitement inside of me that I'm like, oh, check this out. Do you want to play with this? This is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got the whole package, no pun intended.
The whole package, right?
Yeah.
So that's it is a bit of an art form, and I am really excited to be teaching the kinds of quality people that are coming to me now. It's amazing. I didn't set out to particularly attract therapists, but probably 2/3 of my clients at the moment are therapists because they're recognizing that my theory about sexual fantasies and practice, it's not just a theory, it's an actual sets of tools, is answering questions that they're training in therapy school, university,
Right.
didn't actually meet. That they're not equipped, and yet they're the people that the world turns to for anything to understand the mind, right? They don't understand.
Yeah.
And sexual fantasies and our turn-ons are part of the mind thing, but they don't have the tools to deal with it. And so they're recognizing that I've got a framework here that is not only personally benefiting them, but also professionally benefiting them as well. So that's a really exciting thing to be part of that journey of going, oh, I've stumbled, like my personal fear when I was, a wee little thing scared because it seemed like everybody was trying to use sex to take from me, not give to me, men out car windows yelling at me when I was walking down the street when I was as young as 12 years old, just because I had big boobs overnight. To being able to own this force inside of myself and know that it's for my benefit and share it with the right people. And to be the person who now is training not only people who are just just want to explore themselves because they want to use the erotic as a way to just constantly discover who they are and share that with someone else.
Yeah.
But also some of the world's leading sex workers, professional dominatrixes, sex educators. Somehow, if you follow your own interests, you face your own fears, you can flip that on your head and end up being one of the most powerful and most important parts of being alive. So that's my story, from fear to feeling like I'm the queen on the throne.
I love it. So, where can people find you? I found you on a Facebook group, or maybe you found me, or we found each other. Where can people find you?
Well, you can go to my website, which is artemisiadevine.com, or you can actually go to myfantasies.com, which has got a free gift for you if you want to. If you're curious now, after you've heard that story, you're like, well, how do I even begin though? Like, what do I do?
Right.
What do I do? How do I even understand this? There is a free lesson for you to download, and since you're listening to this on audio, you can keep listening to it on audio, so you can do it while you're out for your walk or commuting, and you can learn some of the things that I'm teaching the elite people and how to get started, and that's myfantasies.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure the listeners will thank you too.
That was such a fun conversation. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I do have one more question for you, though. I ask at the end of every episode, and that is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
I'm going to repeat the same thing I said before because it cannot be heard enough. Sexual fantasies are genius at changing your internal state. They are not instructions for how to literally behave in the outside world. You don't need to literally grab the bottom of the person in front of you in the elevator. That's not the point. You don't need to be as beautiful as the ideal person you fantasize about in order to get that feeling. It's not literal. It's symbolic. You ask yourself that feeling again and again. Okay, I'm attracted to that ideal beauty because it makes me feel what? Right? When you understand that, you actually don't need the ideal beauty to get that same feeling, but you do get that feeling genuinely met.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Artemisia de Vine signing off. Until next time.